We are in the new year, 1 week into 2023, and how are those New Year's resolutions going? If you are tired, which I'm sure a lot of us are, with the one size fits all diet solutions, this show is for you because my next guest is renowned functional health expert and best-selling author, Dr. Mindy. She is here with us. We are excited to be talking about her latest book, Fast Like a Girl, a woman's guide to using the healing power of fasting to burn fat, boost energy, and balance hormones. Welcome, Dr. Mindy, to the new Mid.
Oh, thank you, Michelle. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm excited. I love your book. And I
Thank you.
found when I was reading it, the foreword by Leanne Rimes, which she's amazing.
Yeah.
And she, I think, sets the tone for your book.
Oh my
Because
gosh.
in the beginning, she writes, "You are about to discover the healing power of your female form." And I love the title, Fast Like a Girl. So, how did all of this come to fruition?
Yeah. Oh my, for starters, I have to say, I love that you got that about the forward because when I was writing the book, she and it had just come to me for some health coaching. And so I was writing the book and then I would be talking to her and I'd be writing the book. And I realized like she has to write the forward, like she gets what I'm doing. And then she brought her musical twist to it and really had like this rhythm. She understood the rhythm of hormones. So I just love that you saw that it was a beautiful entry into the whole book. So thank you for that, because I love the reflection that people give me when they read the book. It was
Ye-
incredible.
Yeah, it really did set the tone, which is
Mhm.
interesting. I didn't, using that phrase, using that word because she is a musician,
Yeah,
but she really did understand it
yeah,
and and helps you listen while you're reading and
yeah,
hear what you have to say. So let's
yeah.
jump into
Love it.
it. First of all, what drew you to decide to write, which by the way, so I have the book back here if you haven't seen. Love the title.
Yeah,
Fast
thank
Like
you.
a Girl.
Thank
First of
you.
all, okay, how did you come up with the title?
Okay, so here's what's funny about the title. So here's what the book originally was going to be called. It was going to be called The Fasting Fix for Women. And I kind of was like sitting with it. I'm like, I don't know, like that's not exactly what it is. And so one day I was out like, running and it popped into my head, really, we need to know how to fast like a girl. And then we had all these like, ideas around the word girl. In fact, I see some women that are saying like, I'm not a girl, but it's my cousin is actually a feminist philosopher, and she pointed me to a beautiful essay that shows called Throw Like a Girl, and it was printed out in the 80s, and it shows that the mechanics of our female body actually demand that we do things different. So when we have used the term throw like a girl in a bit of a condescending way, like, oh, you don't want to throw like a girl. But if you actually stop and you look at the female body, we do everything different because our mechanics and our hormones demand that. So the title really was a way for us to see that there is a unique pattern that we need to do when we fast that goes with our feminine body. Doesn't matter if you're 15 or 16, which a lot of teenagers are starting to intermittent fast, or if you're 75, you still have to do this in accordance with your female body. And what I think is, I'm hoping will happen with this book is once you understand your female body, you'll understand that you need to exercise according to your hormones. You need to take your supplements. You need to eat. It's even social engagements, and we can get into why all of this happens. But we are hormonally driven. And so when we learn how to match our lifestyle to support our hormones, we're going to stop seeing people struggle to lose weight. We're going to stop seeing people building chronic disease and having all these autoimmune conditions that are happening to women, and PCOS and infertility. All of that is about women doing things more in a masculine way. And I don't know how to say that any differently, but we do it, a feminine body has a lot of ebbs and flows to it. And we need to know how to work with these ebbs and flows.
Well, we have quite a few things that are happening, from
Right.
starting our menstrual cycle. I don't want to leave the title just yet because what I took it as, I know the throw like a girl. but I also know the run like a girl. I've
Right.
heard that, "Oh, you run like a girl." And what I loved about this is the first time I saw it, uh, I thought about running. So I
Ah,
was like, "I
love
love
it.
this, fast, like, girls are fast, like, yeah, I
Yes.
wanna be fast and running," and then I was like, "Oh, okay, no, it's intermittent fasting, this is great." But I love that my mind had started to go towards the positive now
Oh,
of
oh,
seeing
thank
that, and
you.
I'm hoping that that is really starting to change people.
Yes. Yes.
And
Thank
that's
you.
why I applaud you for going with this title because
Yeah.
we do need to change that narrative and that
Yes.
perspective on it. I have 2
Yes.
daughters, so I'm all
I
about
love it. I love it.
that.
On that point, I just want to point out to everybody that's listening, if we look at the way women in general have been approaching healthcare, is it's very one size fits all. And we even approach dieting since we're in the new year. A lot of people want to lose weight. We really approach dieting like, oh, I saw my friend go on a diet and she lost a bunch of weight. So I'm going to go on that diet and I'm surely going to lose weight. And then what happens when we start to look to do things either like our friends or we look to do things like how men do things is that when we fail, we go into this guilt and shame. And why I really wanted to bring this concept of fasting like a girl is once you understand your feminine body, you know when estrogen's coming in, you know when progesterone's coming in. If you're in perimenopausal years, do you understand what's going on with your hormones and why you're gaining weight? You're not gaining weight because you're undisciplined. You're gaining weight because estrogen's going down in the 40s. And so how do you work with that? And what I really want to do is bring back this bio individuality that the feminine body demands. And we have been trying to clump men and women together in health, and it can't, we shouldn't. We need to do things in more of a rhythm. To Leanne's point in the forward, that we need to really do a lot more in and out with our health habits. Like if you're an avid worker outer, like you love to run, awesome. There's times in your cycle where you can push your runs, push your workouts. And then there's times in your cycle you need to not push it. And if you're a perimenopausal woman, your hormones are demanding that when you after 40 that you change your lifestyle to meet the decline of these hormones. And this is the conversation I'm hoping this book is going to open up. I just chose to do it through fasting because that was my specialty, but I also dive into foods and how we can eat according to our hormones. So there's so many incredible lessons in the book that go beyond food and fasting for women.
Well, what's so great is your first chapter. Your first chapter, you start, "It's not your fault." Like, how
Thank you.
great is that that you're giving us the the permission to be okay with where we're at in our lives and that you pick up this book, which is a how-to manual. So it's like, "It's okay, it's not your fault. Now let's get going." Now
Right.
now know better, do better, right?
Yes, yeah, and
So
that's thank you for I love hearing your reflections on that because if there was one message I could give women is let's put the guilt and shame down around food and dieting and body image. And let's come back to center and reset ourselves and say, okay, now let's understand why dieting doesn't work. So in that chapter, I talk about the failed 5. Like these are the 5 things that we do in dieting that absolutely are destroying us. And if we don't pull women off of that, we're going to continue every year with another, here's the fad diet, here's the fad diet. And really, it's about if you want whatever health goal you're going after, the most important thing is that you understand where hormones fit into that first, and then the health habits will become effortless. And this is what I've seen with fasting and eating according to a woman's cycle or according to wherever you are in the menopausal journey, is that all of a sudden women who have struggled with dieting for so many years, when they understand when they should go low carb and when they can go high carb and what does it mean to go high carb, when they get that, there's like fun and flexibility. And I can't tell you how many women have come up to me and said, this is the first eating program, fasting program, a way of living that I've been able to stick to. And they're losing, like, people come up and they're like, I just lost 20 pounds in 3 months. They're like dropping weight left and right, but they're not deprived. And that's what I'm trying to break apart is that old paradigm is not working for us anymore. Let's step into a new one.
So give us some insight into what we should be looking at. Let's change our whole thought process, which you are blowing up, like you said, and blowing up that paradigm. Let's like start anew. We're fresh. Hopefully everyone goes out quickly. If you haven't already, gone on Amazon or go to your local bookstore and pick up this book. Help us. Dr. Mindy, please help us. Let's start new. Where do we start?
Yeah. And so it's I think the best place to start is to understand your sex hormones and to understand that in the difference between men and women in these sex hormones. So let me give you a really short explanation of it. Men are work hormonally on a 24-hour cycle. So, and they have one hormone that drives them, and that's testosterone. And they get testosterone surges every 15 minutes. That testosterone goes up into the brain and converts to estrogen. So if you are, listening to anything around male hormones, there's a lot of talk about how, well, men have estrogen drives them as well. But the thing all they have to do is focus on getting more testosterone, and all the rest of those hormones that serve them, like estrogen, are going to follow. Women, we have to focus on 3 hormones, and it's estrogen, progesterone, and testosterone. And when we look at estrogen and progesterone, I put this line in the book, and it's probably my favorite line in the book, which is we need to look at estrogen and progesterone as sisters. They have the same last name. They're sex hormones, but they have vastly different personalities. So what I've been really trying to help women understand is that once we understand the personalities of these hormones and where they come in and out of our cycle when we're menstruating, what kind of lifestyle to match to them, now we're able to build our health habits around it. And let me give you an example just from those 2 hormones alone, and then we can talk about testosterone. Estrogen, if you're a cycling woman, comes in from day 1 until about day 10 of your cycle. She will peak at ovulation, which is around day 12. Everybody obviously ovulates a little different. Estrogen, if she could talk to you, she would tell you, keep glucose low, keep insulin low. I will thrive. The positive estrogen. And this is the other thing we need to know, is that we have protective estrogen and we have harmful estrogen. The harmful estrogens are coming from this toxic world we live in. The protective estrogens start to flourish when we do things like fasting and eat the right foods. So estrogen wants you to go into more intermittent fasting, go into a little more, even some of the longer fasts that I talk about in the book. Estrogen wants you to keep glucose low. So you switch over, even if you don't want to go keto, switch over to nature's carbs, get off the refined flours and the refined sugars, because estrogen really wants that glucose balance. Anybody who's got PCOS, that is because estrogen is out of balance. You become insulin resistant, then you start to throw testosterone off. So we could go to so many hormonal challenges that are happening to women that are built around estrogen. And what estrogen wants you to know is bring glucose down. Please bring glucose down, and my protective capabilities will thrive. The other thing that we know about estrogen is she's very forgiving of stress. So when cortisol goes high, if we are pushing our workouts, if we are going through a stressful time at work, you're not going to throw estrogen off very much. She is very, very forgiving of cortisol spikes. So that makes it great when she comes on the scene for us to be able to power up on some of those more intense health habits. You could even take it to like the crazy things people are doing, like jumping in cold water and, some of the crazy biohacks that spike cortisol, estrogen will do well with. Progesterone's 180 degrees the opposite. And you have 2 daughters. So I'm guessing that your 2 daughters have vastly different personalities.
Yes, they
right?
do. Yes,
So,
they do.
so this is a perfect example. So progesterone, and the other thing I want to say about estrogen, she makes us very outgoing. We can we like to verbally process when estrogen is on the scene. We're great multitaskers. We have great mental clarity when estrogen's on the scene. Progesterone, we don't have that. It's at the back half of the biggest surge of progesterone comes in the week before your period. And what progesterone wants you to know is she needs glucose. So you actually become more insulin resistant the week before your period, which makes it, if you're trying to diet during that time, now we're stepping into danger zone of you destroying your hormones. So especially if you're doing some low carb dieting or you're going into too many long fasts during that time, we've got to actually bring glucose up. But you don't bring glucose up through refined flours and sugars. You bring glucose up through nature's foods. So sweet potatoes, regular potatoes, quinoa, wild rices, tropical fruits, citrus fruits. These are things that progesterone loves. Now, where I want every woman to relieve themselves of is how many times have we sat the week before our period and said, all I want is carbs. I just want to eat. I'm so hungry. Yeah.
Or chocolate.
Or chocolate. So, and I'll talk about chocolate in a moment because I want to break this week apart for women. Yes, because progesterone is demanding that you bring glucose up. And because she needs more glucose to be able to come to fruition and be able to appear. And you need progesterone to spike, to shed that uterine lining to start your period again. So we should not be in a restrictive mode during that time. With chocolate, progesterone also needs magnesium, and chocolate is the best form of magnesium out there. So if you find yourself beating yourself up the week before your period because all you want is chocolate and carbs, what I ask you to do is A, relieve yourself of that. You're not undisciplined. And B, now let's make smart choices. This doesn't mean sit on the couch and have a box of pizza and a tub of ice cream. That's not what progesterone's asking. She's asking for, high quality chocolate, or take a magnesium supplement. Maybe the chocolate craving will go away. And let's lean into the carbs that I mentioned. The last thing I'll tell you on progesterone that is so interesting is she doesn't do well with cortisol. So when cortisol goes high, progesterone becomes shy. So anything cortisol producing, including fasting, which is why in the book, I explain when a woman should fast and when a woman shouldn't fast. And we definitely don't want women going into longer fasts, longer than 12 hours, 13 hours that week before her period. But also she shouldn't be pushing her workouts. The overscheduled rushing woman really will drown during this time. So we were meant as women during the progesterone producing time to come into this more, I call it the nurture phase, to really nurture ourselves and to quiet our mind and slow our schedules down, and bring more carbs, healing carbs into the picture. And when we do that, we're going to find that our hormones are going to work better for us. And if you look at the personalities where estrogen is outgoing, progesterone is more inner. She's more like, leave me alone. I'm going to sit on the couch here. I don't want to talk to anybody. In fact, I don't know if you've been watching Wednesday, the new Netflix series Wednesday, but
yeah.
I'm like pretty sure that progesterone would be Wednesday, where she's like, I want to stay by myself. Everybody back away. And estrogen would be Enid, where she's like, hey, I love everybody. Like, that's the personalities of these hormones. So we got to start that. The conversation needs to start with us understanding the differences between those two.
So progesterone's an introvert.
And she's an introvert and she's psychic, and she wants to just be inner and just get to quiet the mind. And when we don't do that, we really destroy her.
Yes. I wanted to ask you, if you don't have a cycle anymore,
Yeah.
do you still, we sort of still have a cycle even if we don't have a cycle?
It's a great question.
So where do we see estrogen and progesterone here?
Yeah. So let's talk about women over 40, and how you can do this. What I just said, how do you time that when your cycle is either absent or, like a perimenopausal woman where it's like, hey, sometimes it's every 2 weeks and then it's every 4 months. So if you're in perimenopause and you still have a cycle, but it's vastly irregular, the first thing I recommend you do is start tracking your cycle. And at 45, I started tracking my cycle for the first time in my life. I was kind of laughing at myself, like I probably should have done this at 20, not 45. And get an app. We actually have an app coming out with Fast Like a Girl where you can just start to track your cycle, and then it'll tell you what food and fast and exercise match to that day. So start tracking your cycle. Now, In the book, I have a 30-day reset for the woman with a vastly irregular cycle. And you would just start day 1 is the day you bleed. And then you would go all the way around to day 30. And if you haven't started your cycle again, you would just go back to day 1. I explain it all in the book. So that I have found to help perimenopausal women have a little bit smoother hormonal experience. The other thing that the perimenopausal women need to do is get to know these personalities. So, for example, as you go through perimenopause, if you're spotting, if you're struggling to sleep, that's progesterone knocking on your door saying, hey, I need more glucose to be able to come and reveal myself. So sometimes you would just have to listen to that symptom and bring in more carbs that day, lower the stress that day so that you can give progesterone what she needs. What estrogen does in perimenopause is she shoots up and down in those 40s. And so this is where hot flashes come in. This is where the wrinkling starts to come in. This is where the dry mucosal membranes come in. This is where the cognitive decline comes in. So if you're experiencing that, okay, we now know the rules. The rules are get glucose low. You can fast more, go into more of what I keto, or in the book, I call it ketobiotic because I want women to still really lean into vegetables. So we can start to look at these signals a little bit more and then course correct according to what they need. And I think that's really the hardest part, is that perimenopausal years, but you can do it. I'm 53 years old. I'm in that transition period into menopause. And I can tell you, I played with these principles throughout all of my 40s. Now, for menopausal women or women that don't have a cycle, again, in the book, I have this 30-day reset that you can follow. But I actually lately, I can tell you, as I move into menopause, I've been tracking it to the moon. So what's really interesting and not talked about enough is if we didn't have all this blue light coming into our eyes, most every woman would cycle together and it would be built around the moon. And here is what it would look like: is you would start your period on the new moon when so day 1 would be just as the moon is starting to wax. And you would have your ovulation would be at the full moon. So get a moon app. And when you learn the concepts in the Fast Like a Girl, like when from the new moon to the full moon would be estrogen building. So if you're a menopausal woman, then you're going to apply the tools that we know help estrogen from the new moon to the full moon. And then when the full moon starts to wane and goes back into its sliver of a moon, that's where you're building progesterone. So lean more into the principles of progesterone. So I actually think the moon is a beautiful thing for menopausal women to start to track their lifestyle too. And we don't give enough credit that we're so symbiotic with the earth and the planet like that.
I love that because it is something that's easy.
Yeah, right?
There's so much out there that's just complicated, and this is easy, and this is something we can do. I want to come back to the 30-day reset fast because I love resets. I am a
Awesome.
huge proponent of resets. I think life happens and you are meant to live it.
Yes,
So it's okay to hit reset as many times as you need
agree.
and forgive yourself. But
Agree.
first, I want to talk to you. There's two things that I would love to touch upon, and you can tell me which way you want to go with this. I want to get back to talking about fasting. You have 6 different types of fasts, and then the
Yes.
other thing that you talk about is the fasting cycle.
Yes. Yeah.
How would
So
you like to approach that?
yeah, so let's go through the 6 different length fasts for a minute. And then we'll tie it to the fasting cycle. And then I'll show you what I created in the 30-day reset for people who want to do that in the new year. And I have a beginner and an advanced version of that, so that if you've never fasted before, it's a beautiful tried and true plan that will help you lose weight and balance your hormones. So when we look at the fasting cycle, and a woman's period. The other thing I did with hormones, well, actually, let's go back. Let's go to the 6 fasts. So what I did with the 6 fasts is this is based off science and what I've read. And then this is also based off of, I've been on my YouTube channel. We have like almost 30 million views of women that have been applying these principles. And these women have been giving me feedback, along with the women in my practice and the women that I've been coaching. And what I've seen is that there are 6 different length fasts that work for women. And if you've never fasted before, just listen to me as I go through these, because you might think this is crazy, but I'm telling you, I've watched millions of women apply these principles.
And I have to say, Dr. Mindy, I appreciate that because you're
Mhm.
not just, okay, this is science and this is a study
Yeah.
and you're like, no, this is real life.
Yes.
These actually work. And that's what I appreciate. And I'm so grateful that you are sharing that
Thank you.
because women, we're different. We're all different
Yeah.
and different things work, but what you've done is proven, like
Yeah.
you've seen it. So,
Yeah.
okay, I'm
Thank you.
excited. The
Yeah,
6
no,
different
thank you for that, because as I go through the fast, you might be like, no way am I ever doing a 3-day water fast. Although I tell you why you should do it. But back to where we started this conversation, I really want to get women out of trying to do everything the way that other women do it, even and the way men do it. Like, let's find our own natural rhythm with it, which is why these 6 different length fasts, I look at them like a Swiss Army knife. Sometimes you pull out the knife, sometimes you pull out the screwdriver, sometimes you pull out the wine opener, sometimes you pull out the tweezers. So when we go through these fasts, think of it like that. So intermittent fasting is the most popular style of fasting. It's when you go without food for somewhere between 12 to 16 hours. And in that time period, that's enough to bring glucose down, that you will switch over into what we call the fat burning energy system. And this is where you will burn fat permanently, by the way, and make a byproduct called a ketone. And a ketone will go up into your brain and it'll supercharge your brain. Now, for the perimenopausal woman, this is key, because as she's losing estrogen and is having more of cognitive decline and not being able to hold on to information or forgetting things, when you put ketones in her brain, all of a sudden she feels normal again. So, but also ketones are a byproduct that you are burning fat. We also see at this level of time of fasting that you upregulate testosterone, which women need testosterone too, and you upregulate growth hormone. Growth hormone slows aging and it burns fat. So if all you want to do is master 12 to 16 hours, there is a whole neurochemical magic that will happen in your body if you stay there. But if you continue on, the next fast is what I call autophagy fasting, which starts about 17 hours without food. And this is where the intelligent body looks within and it starts to get rid of any cells that are not working right. We call these senescent cells, and they were aging cells, or some of them will become cancer cells, and they build chronic disease and they speed up aging. So throwing in some 17-hour fasts, now what you've done is you're getting rid of those cells and you're literally slowing the aging process down and preventing many cancers that will plague women. A lot of people think of autophagy fasting as like detoxing, and it is a form of detox. So it's a great one to do for the new year. And I throw it into the 30-day reset for those that want to try it out. Then you've got 24 hours. We know that the whole intestinal mucosal lining will reboot itself. And you get stem cells that go in there and repair that intestinal lining. Now, why that's important is we've got a whole group of, generations of women that have been on birth control and have been on antibiotics. Our age group came out of the antibiotic birth control decades where we just dished that out to women left and right. And so their microbiome is in such bad shape, they're not even able to break estrogen down. So I love throwing a 24-hour fast at those women and helping them repair their gut. It's better than any supplement I've ever found. And then the 36-hour fast is where you're really going to start to burn weight and fat. It's a long enough time period to unstick weight. You don't have to do it all the time, but one 36-hour fast and boom, you will find your metabolism works for you a lot better. At 48 hours, we reset our whole dopamine system. So if you have any depression or anxiety, I see a lot of women when they go into midlife, especially as you lose estrogen. Estrogen is a precursor to dopamine and serotonin. So it's very easy for women to slip into depression in those perimenopausal years. And so, 1 48-hour fast can reboot that whole system. So now you're able to use dopamine a lot better. And then the Mac Daddy of all fasts is the 72-hour fast, where you reboot your whole immune system and you get a whole surge of stem cells through your body. So any injured body parts, stem cells will repair any cell in the body that's not working right. So, I mean, all of that happens without spending a dime.
Okay, so 72 hours without eating seems overwhelming. That's 3 days.
Yes.
So if you are new to fasting, I'd love to break this down though. If you think about it, 12 hours isn't that bad. If you
No,
if you
everybody can.
stop eating at 7 o'clock
Yeah.
at night and then start at 7 a.m. in the morning. But as you start to grow more like into the 16, those it's not like you can only have water, correct? I mean, there are things like green tea
Yeah.
and
Oh, yeah. And I put all of that. I actually put in the book. There's some incredible research that's not talked about enough in the fasting world. And it's called a fasted snack.
okay.
And it's a pure fat bomb. And I list my favorite in there, and that you eat that will satiate you. So, but it keeps you fast in that fasted state. So think of these 6 fasts as like you have to train for them. There's so many women that are doing like marathons, or they'll go do walks for different causes, and they have to train for that. It's the same thing with this, is that don't just jump into a 3-day water fast. You can if you want, but I give in the book some little tricks on how to ease yourself into that. I even have what I call a 2-week pre-reset, where you're just changing food and you're starting to slowly compress your eating window in a very slow manner, elongating your time for fasting. That will prep people for some of those longer fasts. But to your point, yeah, it's a training process.
Great. Yes. And how about breaking the fast?
Yeah. So with breaking the fast, that also is really important. I have a whole chapter on it because it's not talked about enough. We have to remember that healing happens while fasting. And one of the other points I wanted to point out to you is that unlike any diet you've ever been on, the more you fast, the easier it gets. So please keep that in mind, because I think what happens is when we start to go without food, the brain, I know my brain did this when I first learned this, is the brain thinks, okay, if it's hard now, an hour from now, it's going to be even harder. But the more you train, the easier it gets. So we have to keep in mind that there's this healing that happens when we fast, but then once you bring food back in, there's also another layer of healing that can happen. So I have 3 different ways to break your fast, regardless of whatever the time is that you fast. And one of them is protein, and I show you how you can actually grow muscle, which is important for weight loss using that. One of them is feeding your microbiome. So if you've been on a lot of probiotics over time, antibiotics or birth control, I show you how you can repair your gut. And then the third one is using fat for those people that want to try to go a little longer, and it ties into the fasted snack. So the breaking your fast is important.
Which is great. And again, plugging the book this is a how-to manual. I mean, it
Right.
really
That's
does
right.
explain all of this. So, and
Thank
then
you.
we get into the fasting cycles, the 3 phases, the
Yeah.
power phase, the manifestation phase, and the nurture phase.
Yeah.
So, talk to us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So when I first learned hormones, I was like, oh my God, these follicular, luteal, like, how can everybody keep track of this? And I had a good friend who's a hormone expert say, we really should give them nail polish names. And I was like, yes, we should. That's amazing. But I don't, I didn't know which nail polish names to give them. So what I did is I gave the names of the cycle according to what you should do. So day 1 to day 10 of your cycle is when you are building estrogen, and you can power up on all the things we've talked about. You can do your longer fast, you can do keto, you can do a bigger workout from day 1 to day 10. And that's what I show in the fasting cycle. And I call it the power phase, because you can push it during that time if that's your desire. ovulation is day 11 to day 15. Every woman's different. And I called it the manifestation phase because honestly, women, we need to know that we are so flipping powerful during ovulation. You have estrogen at her peak, making your brain like crazy on fire, smart, and great mental clarity. And then you've got, and also let's just point out that estrogen makes our hair very full and gives us a glow to our skin. So, and there's, primally a reason for that, so that the species could continue on. So we are supposed to look more beautiful during ovulation. And then also you've got testosterone coming in. And testosterone isn't just libido. Testosterone is motivation and drive. So for women that want to have a big work project or if you wanted to start a workout plan, start it during that phase, which is why I called it manifestation, because whatever you want to manifest can happen during this hormonal superpower time. And then you have a little bit of progesterone. So it's crazy how the body does this. It's like all three, it's the only point of the cycle where all three of these hormones are coalescing for your benefit to release this egg. And that's the purpose of them all coming together. But it also means you have some really ridiculous superpowers. And that's why I call it the manifestation phase, like manifest away. So then as you come out of the manifestation phase, about day 16, all these hormones drop again. And so when hormones are low, we can push fast, we can push our workouts, we can do more. So it's another power phase. I call it power phase 2. And then starting day 20, this is when progesterone's really making her debut. And this is the nurture phase. I originally thought about calling it the chill out phase, but really what I wanted women to know is it's about nurturing yourself. It's about letting others nurture you. We had a beautiful webinar that we did last night with Leanne Rhymes and Danica Patrick and Elle McPherson. And I was so proud of Leanne because she gets on and she's like, okay, I just want everybody to know that if I start crying, it's because I'm about to get my period. And I was like a proud mama. I was like, yes, that's what we need to start to do, is normalize when that hormone comes in, and we need to nurture ourselves and ask others to nurture us around us, and really take slow life down. So that's what the fasting cycle is about, is understanding where these hormones are flowing in and out.
Which is powerful. And I think I love how you talk about the manifest phase that we're so powerful. And I love that. So a lot of us are not on our cycles anymore, but what's great is we can take all of this information for our daughters as well.
Yes.
But
Yes.
thinking about it in the moon, so we do sort of have these phases as well as we're in the menopausal. But I think it's important for us to realize our power. And
Yes. Thank you.
and I love that Leanne was like, I'm gonna cry because of this. But the new mid is all about showing how midlife is fantastic and fun.
Yes.
And we shouldn't be ashamed of it. And we shouldn't feel bad about saying I'm 54 years old and
Yes.
all of that. So that's why I feel like knowing our hormones, knowing how we should eat, knowing how we should exercise really is empowering us. And as I was saying just a little earlier, I'm all about the reset because I think life just happens. And especially in midlife,
Yeah.
we get thrown curveballs quite a bit.
Yes.
There's the change and lots of things are changing and we're
Yeah.
changing the change now, which is great. But I love that you have the 30-day reset
Yeah.
because we do need to hit the reset button and not feel bad about it.
Yeah.
And you talk about that.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up. And for the women that are, in your 40s and 50s, I recently saw a statistic that actually motivated me to write my next book, which is that from 45 to 55 is the most common time for women to commit suicide.
Uh,
When you stop and you think about that, these are our mothers. They have grown, teenage kids, a lot of them. They have careers, they have communities. Why are so many women committing suicide during that time? And largely it's because we don't understand our hormones. We don't understand that when estrogen goes down, our ability to handle stress is really low. In fact, in the book, I quote an incredible study I found that if a trauma happens to a woman during her cycle where estrogen is low, that trauma is going to have a stronger imprint on her brain than if estrogen is high. So if she has, goes through a breakup or a divorce, and she is in that thick of that stress to make that decision during ovulation when estrogen's at its highest, it's going to have a less of an impact than if she does that on day one of her period. So, now let's apply that to the menopausal woman. I mean, we're losing estrogen. We're struggling to be able to hold on to information and remember what we're saying. And stress hits us much harder. And so how do we help this? How do we normalize this? How do we show women, okay, here are some strategies during that time? And that 30-day reset is a great door in, because you could just start on day one. You don't have to time it to anything. You can time it to the moon if you want. But once you start to apply the 30 days of really going in and out of a lower carb, higher carb, little bit of fasting, maybe a longer fasting, maybe no fasting. That's what I'm going to teach you, how to ebb and flow so we accommodate all these hormones that you are losing, and you can start to feel like yourself again. That to me is the power that 30-day fasting reset has for perimenopausal and menopausal women.
Oh my gosh, it is so important to find ourselves again during this time. And now that you say that, because we get hit too with, ourselves or friends getting cancer diagnosis, or losing a parent, or all of that. And so understanding that at different times it will strike us differently is really powerful, and that's really good knowledge to have. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So I am going to take it in a completely different direction. We all need mentors. We all need people that lift us up through our journey of life. Who has influenced you? Who is somebody that you have, that has made a difference in your life? Because you make a difference in so many people's lives. Who is
Oh my
somebody
gosh.
that you either look up to or has helped you on your journey?
Well, it's so many. If we stay in the women category, there's been so many women that have supported me along this way. I have a tribe of women that continue to support me and lift me up. That nobody knows their names, but they are. I've surrounded myself with some amazing humans. I will tell you that I really love thinking bigger and expanding my mind, and so I've been blessed to know people like Michael Beckwith. I love his teachings. I've had beautiful conversations with people like Bruce Lipton. But, again, we're back in the male category. So in the female category, I would tell you the person that everybody should go follow, that I love her work, is Dr. Libby Weaver. And she wrote a book called Rushing Woman Syndrome that changed my life. And I've since been able to interview her and thank her, and it's incredible. So she's been a mentor. The other one that surprisingly showed up for me in 2020 that I've just really loved her spiritual teachings is Marianne Williamson. And I was lucky to be a part of an author mentorship group where we spent a good portion on Zoom during the pandemic, learning from her how she writes books, how she puts words together, and then, of course, her spiritual ideas. And, if you remove the politics aside, she at the core is an incredible author. She's an incredible advocate for women's rights and for women's health. I also lately have been really looking to women that are older than me to watch how they do health and life. And she's in her 70s. She just turned 70. So that's incredible. And then my new mentor that I love was on our webinar last night was Elle McPherson. And she talked about at 59 how she has taken beauty beyond and health beyond just this physical, and really has bring in the spiritual and the mental, and really looks at herself as a whole. So a lot of women that I've been gleam from. And I think we as women need to support each other. One of my favorite authors is Clarissa Estes, who wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves. And she has this concept called mothering a culture, and how important it is as we move through the menopausal years that we turn around and mother the younger generation. And I really love that, because when we go into full menopause, we actually, many cultures believe we become more psychic. We have more of our intuitive capabilities. I can tell you, I'm a lot wiser at 53 than I was even at 50. And so, I think as women, we need to lean to our elders and learn from them. And then I think we need to turn around and teach the younger generation, and really as women come together, because there's so much wisdom that we can give each other, and especially at the different times of life that we are at.
Oh my gosh, that is so beautiful and so well said. And it's funny because the new mid, it's a community of midlife women, because something that I think is powerful is when we communicate, when we commune together.
Yeah.
And I think we need, as midlife women, especially in this menopause stage, to know we're okay.
Yeah.
And you've really, I have to say, this podcast, it's given me a new purpose, a new
Awesome.
focus, because
Yes.
I didn't realize that 45 to 55.
Yes. Yes.
And I'm all about helping midlife women, and I feel like there's so much more I can do now. So
Yes. Yeah.
this is like
Thank
a real
you.
turning point for me. So thank you.
Love that. Yeah, thank you, because this is not a solo journey for me. This is about bringing women together to amplify our voices. And the last book I wrote was called The Menopause Reset. We're actually adding a chapter to it. Hay House has now bought it, and they're going to republish it in the spring. But in there, I really talk about what women should do lifestyle wise after 40. And I was on a plane recently, and a woman came up to me who recognized me and had read the book. And she said to me something really interesting that hit me. She's like, after I read The Menopause Reset, I realized that I might have saved my marriage in my 40s if I had understood my hormones, if my husband had. And so, yes, to your point that this new midlife needs to be about women supporting each other in the messiness of it all. And then as women, we need to get to know ourselves, and so that we can speak of where we are hormonally. I often will tell my husband, like, I've had a really brain intensive day and I feel like I can't handle stress right now. So anything negative, please don't tell me. And when I was, in my really working on building progesterone, I would just be really frank and be like, I can't relax right now. I feel like I don't have enough progesterone, so I'm going to go for a walk. So I speak the language of hormones all the time, and I think that's what we need to do to start to normalize it. But it starts with us also as women coming together. This is the new healthcare for women, is bringing the feminine, this rhythmic, intuitive, feminine nature that we have into healthcare. And then women, we got to stop doing healthcare by ourselves. Do it together in a community is so powerful.
This is incredible. Thank you so much, Dr. Mindy. How can
Mm.
people get in contact with you?
Yeah, you can go, if you want to buy the book, you can go to fastlikeagirl.com. That we're doing. I don't know when this will come out, but we're continuing to do a bunch of fun giveaways and fun things we're doing together. And otherwise I'm on all social. You can go to drmindypelz.com. My YouTube channel, I'm putting out new stuff. My next book for those listening is going to be about the female brain, what happens to the female brain after 40. So you'll be seeing a lot on my social about that. But I'm all over Instagram, Facebook, everywhere.
This is January 9th, by the way.
Okay, excellent. Great.
It dropped
Perfect.
in the new year. So we're recording this actually before Christmas. But thank you, Dr. Mindy, for your time, for
Oh,
your
thank you,
knowledge, for
Michelle.
advocating for us midlife women. We so appreciate you.
Thank you. Oh, you're moving me to tears. I really appreciate you and your listeners. Please don't give up on yourself. There's a solution, and the more we collaborate and come together, we'll help find the solution for each other. So thank you, Michelle. I really appreciate you.